Sip of coffee to the workout, man. Kicking off. Bench Talk Live. Let people join in. Bench Talk Live. Said to get after it, guys. This is the podcast where we talk benching, anything related to training. Bench Talk Live. You can catch the Benchcast on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure you check that out. Subscribe, follow, whatever it takes. Every week, dropping new content. What's up, Smitty? How we doing, buddy? Thanks for joining in. Appreciate everyone joining in. Got my New York cup today. Sip of coffee to you. Alright, guys, we'll start taking questions whenever. I got some great ones from Instagram the other day. Got a lot of questions on single ply versus multiply. Alright, and the whole process with a single ply shirt versus any other. Now, with single ply versus multiply, there's not a big difference. The groove's going to stay the same on the bench. Not much is going to change except that with multiply, you're going to have to be a lot more patient because you have more layers to work through. Single ply is going to stretch pretty readily on you. Not going to take a ton to break that in. The multiply, obviously, you have more layers there. You have up to numerous layers, as many as you can get modified. Usually, anything beyond triple ply, that's a heavy modification, but you can get those grid stitched, all that. So there's just a lot more to kind of play with a multiply shirt versus a single ply. You have a single layer. It's a lot thinner. All right, but in terms of the groove, nothing's really changing. Okay, nothing's changing in terms of how you're going to work to a tuck or to a touch. And single ply, you're going to have to learn control a lot more because with single ply, that bar is going to want to travel down quicker. So you should have probably more extensive background with raw benching if you're getting into single ply than you would need if you were a multiply lifter, in my opinion. Multiply takes it to a whole different ball game because of the patience, the control, modifying that shirt and things like that. But with single ply, again, not a ton of layers, so you got to be real direct with your adjustments and making sure that you're not stretching the shirt out too much. All right, so that's a big difference. I had some questions the other day on that single ply stuff. Since I've been getting into single ply myself, actually, my next goal is to go down to Texas March 20th, and I'm going to try to break Greg Powell's all-time 220 record single ply. And then move on from there. I don't think I'll be staying in single ply much longer than that, but that's the goal right now. I've been posting up quite a bit of content there of our sessions on our membership group. Covered the whole thing, training recap. So check out our membership, bigbenchit.com, if you want to see full recaps of my training. But I've also been posting it on my personal account, my Instagram, @BenchAndBenny. That's where you can catch my training footage. I've been working in single ply lately, so that'll continue for the next 15 weeks. I'm Smitty. I'm a raw bencher. My shoulder is more irritated when doing volume with long pauses than with touch and go. Any suggestions? So if you're having shoulder irritation, I'd first look at what you can do to mitigate that. Whether it's changing some training variables, maybe training a little bit less. I'm not sure if you're doing currently 1 day, 2 days. Maybe changing some of the exercises, some of the movements that may be contributing to some of that shoulder discomfort. And then I would also look at what you can do via your mobility. Is your shoulder locked up in external rotation? Is it locked up trying to go overhead? And just try to obtain better shoulder mobility, because that's going to allow you more freedom of movement so that you're not getting as much discomfort. So I would look to where you can do those things, soft tissue work, mobility drills, whatever you can to help loosen up your shoulder. Because we want to try to solve that problem before we just completely work around it. Now, in the meantime, I would just avoid doing the pausing, because if that's bothering you, I would move on from that and do what benching you can. That's really how you'd avoid any discomfort, is in the short term, make whatever modification you need to, but then looking in the long term, look to see what you can do to correct that or change your training in order to mitigate that. Okay, so that's how I'd approach that, my friend. Hope that helps. So there's nothing wrong with doing a controlled touch and go if it's keeping you out of that shoulder discomfort. The key is controlled touch and go. Okay, you don't necessarily need to pause long, but there can't be a bounce there. You do want to actually have that control and tension in the bottom. Sip of coffee to the working man. You got it, my friend. Oh, dropping any more cues, guys. Drop some cues. I'm going to talk a little bit about break-in process. Now, if you're looking to see the template that I'm about to share with you, okay, it's pretty simple, but you can just search bench shirt break-in on Google. We're actually in the #1 article pops up. First article on Google, which is pretty cool. That break-in process has helped many lifters, so check that out. Just simple Google search will take you to our article. And I've also done some videos on it where I touch on this in incredible detail and even show my own break-in process on my last Multiply shirt is in our Mastering Shirted Benching course, online course. And you can go to bigbenches.com to check that out. We do have some preview videos of that, so you get a little bit of a free preview on what to expect when you join the course. But that's an awesome resource. I put everything into that in terms of what you would need to know to make shirt adjustments, break in your bench shirt, train in your bench shirt. You can go into the competition, selecting your numbers, what to do with your shirt for each attempt. Everything I could put into it is in that course. So go to bigbenches.com, online courses. You can check that out. But when we're talking bench shirt breaking, it's a rather simple process. At first, you're probably going to be in a scenario where you can't get your hands out to the index on the ring. Typically with shirted benching, your aim is to go index on the ring. You want the widest grip with a tight shirt because it's going to cut range of motion and allow you to be able to work down more effectively. If you're close gripping in a bench shirt, you're extending the range of motion. It's a very difficult thing to do. You can use that strategy if your shirt is very broken in and loose and you don't want to get a new one. I've had to do that so you can get some more of that pop, but it's a longer range. Ultimately, shirted benching, you're looking to get index on the ring. Okay, you're not going to be able to do that first time you get a shirt in. Okay, hopefully not, because that means your shirt's probably too loose. Okay, your first grip is going to be probably struggling to even get your hands to the knurling well. Okay, if you can even get pinky to the ring, that would be great. But you could be in a scenario where you can't even get pinky on the ring. That's okay. Okay, week 1, all you're going to do with a shirt breaking is take whatever grip you can, work as low as you can. I would do reps. I would wet the shirt. I would do that whole shindig. All right, and I would just do triples and just try to get as low as you can. Week 2, obviously your grip you're gonna try to work your grip out as the session goes on, but the next week you're gonna want to make sure you can take that little bit of a wider grip, getting towards the index on the ring, and then just continuing to work down in boards. So week 1, you might have, depending on your range of motion, you might have a hard time getting to a 4 board, with a closer grip. I would even spend some time floating reps too and just trying to pull it in as much as you can. But, as the weeks come on, you're simply working down boards. You're widening out your grip until you can get to a place where pretty much you could get to like a comfortable 1 board with your index out on the ring. And then your shirt, I guess, will be considered broken in. So it really depends on how much pop, how advanced you are as a shirted bencher, and then how much pop you're trying to save for the meet. Because touching in your shirt, doing full range in your shirt is only going to stretch the material more and deliver you less pop. You're going to get less out of the shirt. So it's really the precise art of knowing where you are at technique wise as a shirt lifter, and then getting that shirt to where you need it for meet day. Okay, and sometimes that requires making modifications to the shirt, jacking up the shirt in different ways, or just altogether getting a new shirt, which is going to be my scenario coming up here in March. This single ply, going to stretch very quick on me. I'm trying to get as much training in with this training shirt as I can, and then I'm going to order my comp shirt. And that's probably just after 1 day training in that single ply. It's probably going to have to be a custom 44 chest, 46 arms with a KLA collar. All right, which is a reinforced collar. So that's probably going to be the game winning shirt that day. And that will be ordered. And I'll probably do one session in that shirt and call it a wrap and then take it into the meet. Because with that heavy weight, it's going to bring me down. But I don't want to stretch it out so much. I want to reserve that pop. Okay. So breaking process between single ply to multi-ply, really not too much different, except the single ply is going to stretch a lot more on you. So I would still wet the material either way, because that's going to help the material stretch as well. I think it results in less tearing of the shirt. You're always going to hear some clicks and some pops, kind of like if you start a fire or something, you hear those little pops of the wood, right? You're going to hear those little pops as you're benching in your bench shirt. But we try to mitigate that as much as possible to let the fibers expand versus tearing. It's not a bad thing if they tear. It doesn't mean the whole shirt's going to explode. You're going to see some tearing in your shirts. It's going to happen, but wetting it each time helps mitigate that. But it also stretches the material a bit more. That's why on a day where you're sweating a lot, that shirt's going to expand a lot quicker on you. Okay, so you want to be mindful of that. Might only want one spray on a single ply. Leave it at that. Sip of coffee to the working man. We've got some great questions coming in. Bench Talk Live. Dark Gamer BG, appreciate you joining in again, my friend. Hello, what would you recommend for long hands and long legs bencher? Flat feet or heels up? So typically with longer legged benchers, just referring to those the long legs versus the arms. The arms aren't going to affect that positioning, so to speak. That's not going to affect if your feet flat or feet back, but the legs would, because the height of a bench at a competition is pretty much set, pretty much universal. There's not much difference. Okay, what exactly that height is, I can't tell you. Might be unique fed to fed depending on what unit you're benching on, but the height is going to be universal. And if you're a long-legged bencher, it's not like you can get a mono to jack your bench height up, your bench pad height up. Neither can I get a jack for the deadlift. I got to reach all the way down there. I don't get any special advantage. So it's a disadvantage to have long legs, in my opinion. You have to have the right length. You have short legs, you have a hard time getting down. If you have long legs, now it's very easy. It's harder to actually drive back or keep an arch, and also you get that problem of the butt popping up. So typically with a longer leg bencher, you can make feet flat work, but you're probably going to find that you're going to like the feet back a bit more. And that's usually a better strategy if you're really struggling with keeping your butt down or feeling like you're getting much drive. It's hard to bench feet flat with the long legs, okay? It's because of the height of the bench. You're not able to change that. So that would be my recommendation, but depends. And is it good to switch from heels down to heels up? Would it be easier? So you also have to keep in mind that some federations do not allow your feet to be anything but flat. Okay, far and few between. Things like USAPL pretty much jumps to mind when I think of that. But I think you're pretty much good anywhere else. But yeah, I would look to try the heels back. Obviously, there's a learning curve anytime that you change things up. I remember the first time I went from toes back to putting feet flat, it didn't feel good at all. Okay, it felt real shitty. Could not figure it out. But it was probably the most profound thing I've done for my shirt or bench. Okay, you have to give it some time, no matter whenever you're making a change to anything. Matt, if you're having a sticking point at mid-range, do you work that sticking point, pin press, board pressing, etc. with a close grip or your comp grip? So there I use a combination of both too. If it's a big tricep weakness, then I'll do a lot of maybe like high rep partial range movements like that, like a chain floor press, uh, 15, 20 reps, really burn that out for the tries. Anytime I'm training tries, I primarily like to keep it a higher rep, but I use a combo of both there because you also want to stay relative to what you're doing in a comp. So you want the comp grip, you want to work that range. That's a great question. And how I usually approach that is do more of the close grip stuff further out from the meat. And then as the meat gets closer, always try to make that specificity. Try to get as specific to what you'll be using in the meat in terms of grip and stance and all that. So that's how I'd approach that. That's a great question, though, Matt. Dark Gamer BG, 44 centimeter height. You nailed it on the head, buddy. Matt, hey, appreciate your videos. I have a question. I've got long arms, but my close grip bench is stronger than my regular width. Do you recommend I narrow my grip? Yeah, so this question, we've got this, I think, quite a bit where someone feels stronger in that closer grip than they do in the wider grip. I would absolutely adopt that as your main grip because ultimately you're trying to lift as much weight as you can. Just because it's a closer grip, if you can lift more, that's what you got to go into the meet doing. Does that mean you should switch down the road? Well, that might be something to look into because it will drastically decrease your range. But you have to do that in a slow process because it's different muscles too. You're very tricep dominant. You get a little more out of the back when you're in that closer grip, longer range. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It probably plays into your strengths really well. Maybe you've been doing that for quite some time. Does that mean you should switch over to a wider grip? Not necessarily. Could you build that up past the point you're at now? Maybe. But that would be a slow build. So that would be like sprinkling that in through your training, throughout a training cycle, but making sure you're continuing to progress the grip you're in now. And then if it's one of those scenarios like you're looking at conventional deadlift versus sumo deadlift, all of a sudden now you feel like you're pulling more sumo deadlift, you got to roll with that. It's the same type of thing with grips on the bench press. But I would stick with whatever you are stronger with for sure. JC said, I switched from index on the ring to ring finger on the ring, and that really improved my wrist bending back. Don't know if that's a common occurrence. My wrists and knuckles are more stacked, it seems. Yeah, so that perhaps maybe helping you get into a better bar position on your hand. Maybe you're more easy to dig into the bar. That could definitely do it. But typically with a wider grip too, you're going to have that kind of awkward bent wrist inwards like that. So I can see that certainly helping out. Just like how being in a little bit closer grip is going to stack your elbows right under your wrists. And that's going to help a lot too. So yeah, definitely can see that being a big help. Dirt Gamer, is it luck when you unrack one weight and it feels light after you try to unrack again with the same weight, feels hella heavy? So that is probably a glaring thing of something's happening during that takeout process that you're just unaware of at the moment, but it's pulling you out of position or whatever the case is, because that takeout process is what gaps that setup into a good press. If your takeout, so to clarify for you guys, if you haven't heard me talk about this before, I break the bench down into 3 different phases. You have the setup phase, the takeout phase, and the actual press itself. Okay, the setup phase is where we're setting that positioning, our tightness, pretty much everything that goes into a good bench we have to set there in the setup. The takeout, getting that bar from the rack into your hands in position to bench, that is a crucial phase because it doesn't take much to pull your shoulders out of position. It doesn't take much to activate the wrong muscles. It doesn't take much to not set that weight into your back correctly. A lot happens there. And that, for me, that was a big discrepancy in my training years back. It was that takeout phase. Just like you're saying, my friend, I was finding some sets just feels great, feels light. And then some sets or some days, it's just like shit, this feels heavy. It feels like I'm just pressing through a longer range. And it was just because I'm effing shit up in the takeout that I don't even realize until you realize what you're doing or what you need to key yourself at. And then all of a sudden, you're consistent. You're consistently hitting good sets and stuff. Okay. So definitely something with the takeout going on for you. Royston, does working on forearms help to increase your bench press strength? So it'll indirectly a bit. It'll help obviously with control, stability, probably keeping a good wrist position. In terms, those positional elements will help your bench press significantly. Um, if I had to do a trade off between training your triceps and training your forearms, probably 9 times out of 10, I'm gonna train triceps. So forearms is one of those accessory things where, yeah, it can help, but are there other things we could be doing instead that could help more? And then do we have that extra time to throw in the forearms at the end of the workout? It's really a toss up of, if you can only pick, you go to a restaurant, you got this huge menu. I think at Cheesecake Factory, you got this giant ass menu. I want to eat all of it, okay? But I'm only gonna buy one entree, all right? And it's gonna come with some sides. What are those gonna be? Sure, I'd like some other stuff too, but I'm not gonna be eating them in that meal. You know what I mean? So it's just one of those pick and choose what's actually best for you in the moment. But I definitely try to sprinkle in some forearm strength when you can, and that may be just doing rows without straps and really trying to work grip. Doing one arm dumbbell rows is really tough on the grip. Yeah, that's my weakest link. I'll definitely roll more if I had straps. And JC says, kind of interested in forearms now. What sort of exercises do you do from a powerlifter perspective? So there's a lot of ways that you can train your forearms. Just doing holds is going to be a huge one, and that's probably where I found the most benefit is doing some kind of hold, just having to hold something heavy without it falling out of your hands. Like I said, one arm dumbbell rows, farmer's walks are excellent for that, especially if you don't chalk up. It just increases demands there. Just kind of holding a hang position, like if you're going to do a pull-up, just kind of hanging there from a bar, squeezing your grip. And those really help out a ton because that's more relative to what you'd be trying to do when you're benching. Is just that static strength there. But you could also do direct wrist curls, stuff like that. Hammer curls obviously help the forearms versus doing a traditional dumbbell curl where you supinate. If you keep it neutral, you're hitting some of that brachioradialis of the forearm there. That creates some beefier forearms. And also that helps with leverage a bit. If near the elbow there, if you have the beefy forearm muscle, beefy bicep, right, you're just getting more compression when you're down there, almost like if you had elbow sleeves or something. So yeah, I would train it in multiple ways. It's like when you're training abs, planks and isometric stuff, excellent, very relative to what would be how it would be used when you're powerlifting. However, you still can hit it with the push downs or whatever, ab push downs, where you're actually contracting crunches, that stuff. A good blend of both. Good blend of both. BG Gamer, Dark Gamer, so weightlifters train forearms so much. I can imagine. I mean, a lot of strength going on there to get that bar moving. Sip of coffee to work them in. I also encourage our lifters to warm up as much as you can, trying to not have a belt until you need it, not go into a mixed grip or a hook grip until you need it on the deadlifts. Trying to make things as minimalistic as possible until you get really to that zone where you need it and try to keep progressing that. Everest Land is fabricated. What is the best triceps exercise for mass? If I had to go with one, it would be some sort of like close grip bench type deal. Especially if you're talking bench press. The best way you're going to train your triceps isn't with those little isolation movements. Or if you had to go one bang for your buck, I would pick a big type of partial press. That's going to put the main focus on the responsibility of triceps, be relative to the bench press, very specific, probably be like a board press. I'd say. Dark Gamer BG, tempo tricep pushdowns. That's great too. Um, I'll always go with something that mimics more the bench press, but isolation movements I almost put in its like own little category. And in terms of what's best there, that's really a thing of preference. And it's good to have that change. Right now, I've been a big fan of doing like neutral grip skull crushers. So I get that bar at the gym where it's like a little neutral grip deal, or I use an easy curl bar so you at least get some of that internal rotation so you're not stuck back there. And I've been doing skull crushers with that. I'm also a big fan of push downs. I do those too. Sometimes those are my favorite. Sometimes skull crushers my favorite. Sometimes I like doing something else. It's good to have that variation. It's good to do different things. All right. So in terms of isolation stuff like that, that's really comes down to preference, and I think it's good to switch that up. In terms of best bang for buck, it's going to be some type of press, floor press, partial range bench press. Like a board press, pin press, things like that. Take some more cues here. Thanks for everyone tuning in. Really appreciate it, guys. Um, we're gonna be doing some things coming up. Want to get the 2021 planning guide sorted out. It's gonna be a little bit different this year. I'm gonna have you fill out a Google form so I can actually see everyone's planning guide that they submit, and then we can have a little chat about what it'll take to get to your goals. So I wanted to be a little bit more personal that way instead of just a PDF you fill out. I wanted to actually see the results. It'll probably be through Google Forms. But that every year I've been putting out a planning guide to kind of plan your year out and stuff. Just some questions that'll spark thought and into what you want to do, and kind of setting an action plan and things to really focus on along the way. And this 2021 planning guide, I'm excited to get out. This is our third year doing the planning guide. It's going to be free, no cost involved doing that. Just trying to help you guys get organized and focus for the upcoming year. So that's on my plate right now. Also going to be doing something where I'm going to potentially be opening up the membership as like a trial month for some select few, and might even be opening up an opportunity to jump on our coaching program for like a week trial just to see how it is. Get a little bit of guidance, stuff like that. So obviously I'm very limited in what I can take there, but that is something that on my plate this week, trying to sort through. So some exciting stuff coming up, guys, and also some events and things for our membership site. For those in our membership group, I'm going to be trying to keep up with some regular contests, and things we did, like the home workout contest we did this year, and our step contest, 10K a day. Had a lot of fun with those. So trying to add some more stuff in for our memberships. Sip of coffee for the working man. How high of a board for close grip? That's going to depend on your arm length. So typically you want to be about that mid-range to hit triceps. You want to go to where at a certain point your elbow flexion stops, right? And then you're just kind of stretching out your chest, your pecs, or your shoulders, pecs. All right, so you want to have a board height that's going to pitch you right there, right where that elbow flexion stops. Okay, and that's going to be a different board height for everyone. Roysting, Coach, would be great if you could have a look at some of my bench pressing videos on my channel. Yeah, no problem, but if you could send that to me, that would be even better. Or, just send me the link and remind me on my email, coachben@bigbenches.com. Also, if you can submit me a video, I'm trying to put together a YouTube series now where I'm sure you've seen on other channels. It's just video reviews. So obviously I'll leave you some personal feedback on your videos. But then I'm compiling some vids for a YouTube series where, I kind of talk about what could be done a little bit differently, what's going on well here, all that. So encourage anyone, if you want me to take a look at your vids and be a part of that YouTube series, send me a video, whether it's DM at Big Benches on Instagram, or you email me, coachben@bigbenches.com. I'll take a look at that and put that in the video. Matt, what do you say to the old man, the guy who says, I used to bench 450 in high school, when you know he's full of it. I'll give you a story. The other day, I go into Ultimate Gym, new gym I signed up at. Just trying to do some morning cardio. All right, trying to stay in that 235, 240 range. Just be overall healthier anyway. So getting in there, doing some morning cardio. Um, Older guy there working at the desk. Everyone there is super awesome. Dude was awesome, but he's eyeing me up a little bit going into the building because everyone sees my. For some reason, it attracts a lot of attention. My logo on my Jeep. I got the Big Benches logo on my Jeep, and pull up. He's kind of eyeing me. I feel like he probably thinks I'm salesman-y or whatever. I'm coming in to whatever the business is. He's kind of like, "Can I help you?" I take out my scan card. I'm just here to train. And he's like, "Oh, okay." And then I did my sign in and all that. But then, he's one of those old school lifters, 70 something years old. And he's just one of those old school guys who has a lot of cool stories. I love talking to old time lifters that share their stories and stuff. I could listen to that all day. And yeah, he's just telling me some old school stories. Nothing like you bench 450. But then I get on the treadmill and then I realize someone's doing over there leg presses, and he's going deep with them, and or a hack squat or whatever, and he's going deep. And there's nothing wrong with going deep, right? In squats for special powerlifting, you got to get deep. And he comes up to him, he's like, "No, you can't do that. You'll your knees will be shot. Look at me, my knees are shot." Um, you know, but there's a good way to go deep. But obviously, a lot of old time lifters will tell you that stuff. Probably because back in their day, they didn't have great form. They're probably going super heavy on a hack squat, which probably puts a lot of serious stress on your knee anyway. Um, so that kind of jogged my memory about that, Matt. That was the kind of guy, probably be like, "Hey, bench 450 back in high school." But hey, I'll listen all day. I love hearing old time stories about how lifting was back in the day and the things that went on. I want to be one of those old time lifters one day where I can share my stories, and hopefully it's pretty cool to someone to hear. But I love listening to that. Um, C Coob. How to regain strength fast after a many month loss from a sickness. For me, it's cancer. Trying to regain. First off, my friend, I'm really sorry to hear that. I hope you're doing much better now. I hope you beat that thing. But to come back from something like that, it's difficult, mostly difficult mentally. When you suffer a setback, when you get to a certain point in your strength, you build those components of the muscle. All right, you add mitochondria, you add muscle cells. That stuff never goes away. It's there. May shrink, muscle size may shrink, the fibers may shrink, but the mitochondria, everything that had to be built, is still around. It's kind of like if you're super fat and you have a lot of fat cells. Those fat cells don't just disappear; they just shrink when you lose weight. They're still there, which is why you'll see people who are generally really fat at one point, they lose a lot of weight, they'll gain it back very quick because it doesn't take much to fill up those fat cells again. Okay, so when you get to a certain period of strength, you don't really lose those components, so it's always going to be quicker getting back to your strength than it is to build all new strength. So I would keep that in mind. And then just try to keep a good mentality, best you can, because that's the toughest part. It's just the mentality of where you were at, trying to get back to that point. Um, I would think everything is like a post whatever PR. Okay, start a new list of PRs. Don't compare it to what you used to do, but just continue to try to build upon that, and you'll get there quicker than you think, and you'll be right back to gaining that new strength. Because again, those components of the muscles are there. Just need to buy your time. Don't try to get strong too fast because you're just going to push yourself down the road of injury. So, um, just enjoy the process, my friend. Enjoy training for what it is, and just try to keep the best mentality you can. Smitty, I unrack out of a comp bench, J hooks and monolift arms at home. I train alone in my garage. Any suggestions for getting as close as I can to the specificity of handouts during competition while at home? Well, if you're training yourself, then if you're training by yourself, then there's no real good way to mimic getting a handoff. The best thing I could say to you is You want to lift your butt up, so you want to actually bridge to get the weight out, because that's going to help with the leverages, so you're not pulling your shoulders out of position. Typically, I would set up further back on the bench than you would normally. I would bridge up as high as possible, leverage that weight out, and then you have to come down to that final position. If you were trying to mimic what you do at a meet, obviously you don't want to be bridging up before the handout. You want to set everything in place and let that handout come to you. So what I would do there is, if you ever have the opportunity to get a handoff, you mentioned the monolift arms too. Those are good. They're tough because it's almost like a partial range bench, but at least allows you to get into your setup position and then take the weight there. And that's something you're going to want to practice, because a lot of times if you continue bridging up and then getting that handoff, if you do that in a meet, a lot of times I see people bring their hips down, and because they never checked in with their final setup position, they find that something's off. They try to move their feet around. It never feels like the position they should be in, and it causes some issues, because you can't have your feet wiggling around when you're trying to drive back on your traps and do all that. So you need to know where your final position is in terms of where your hips are settling, where your feet are. So that would be the main thing. That's a huge thing I see. If you're used to lifting, bridging, and stuff, and all of a sudden now you're not. Thanks, Big Benches. Awesome advice. You really said it well. Appreciate that, my friend. There's some more questions coming in. Dark Gamer BG. Don't think maybe sore forearms. I don't know. Sip of coffee to the worker, man. Matt had a great question the other day. Do you vary board heights every workout? So my answer to that is it really varies. It depends. Like right now, I'm doing a lot more board work, and it's staying pretty much around that one board, because I don't have a big variance of boards anyway, because my range is so small. It's really 1.5, one board, half board. And those are the only board sizes I can really use. Right now, mostly spending time on the one board. Typically, the boards are usually going to vary within a 4-week block. Usually it's going to go from like high board, mid board, low board, or no board. Different accommodating resistance depending on where it's at in the training period. But yeah, the board's they're not necessarily going to vary every time, but typically I'd say they would. But it also depends too. I have athletes who I stay away from boards completely as much as I can, because they need to have more of that practice down at the bottom position. How to tuck into the shirt, the positioning element of it. So we try to stay away from boards as much as possible. So again, it's one of those things very individual. Right now I'm spending more time on the one board, different accommodating resistance for this 4-week block, as to not break in the single ply shirt too much. I definitely don't want to touch in it right now. So although I could, I'm not taking it that extra range to actually put that stretch on the shirt. I'm just going to stretch it to the point where I could get an easy touch with a one board, but no lower. But that was a good question. Typically, it's within a 4-week block, too. For our athletes, like if we're doing secondary work, I'll have them on a certain board, close gripping or something for the 4-week block, but the board's going to remain the same. Smitty, yes, I do bridge at home and get weights on lats. Thanks for all the advice. Good stuff, bro. Glad to help, my friend. Yeah, the bridging you kind of have to do with a self takeout, but obviously you want to at least be comfortable not doing that when you do have a handoff. All right. GeoPower 50. Hey, coach, what do you think is a good carb, fat, protein gram totals per day for weighing 205 pounds to gain strength? However, not to gain too much on the belly fat. It's tough to find a happy medium. Thank you. So nutrition, I'm going to tell you right off the bat, my friend, not something that I specialize in. I do have some background knowledge on proper nutrition, macros, and all that, but that's far from my expertise. So I would probably recommend you to another source on that. Because again, I don't really pay much attention, put out a lot of info on nutrition. But I would say um, typically protein around that 30% mark. Um, Carbs is really the big thing that you want to manipulate more often than not. You want to, and I would even kind of waive what you do. So when we're talking carb intake, mostly around workouts, but if you have an off day, try to keep lower carbs and just keep thinking carbs are fuel. So if you don't, not in a period of time where you need fuel to do anything, try to stay minimal on the carbs. Try to eat good carbs that aren't like sugar based shit, So that just would be my general um, feedback for that. It's a lot of the carb manipulation. Have more protein, have more fat, keep the carbs a little bit lower. And that also is going to help with bloat and stuff like that too. So those huge swings you get on a regular basis, if you can manage your carbs well, keep that consistent, you're going to see less of those fluctuations. You'll really be able to kind of predict what your weight's going to be in the morning. Um, when I'm trying to drop weight, it's a lot of just manipulation of carbs, taking carbs out completely with sodium. Knowing I'm going to drop probably 2 pounds that day. Each day usually yields about a 2 pound drop, even if I'm just eating as much as I want of other stuff. So typically when I do my weight cuts, I'll load up on steak, onions, mushrooms, throw on it, and I'll just eat a bunch of steak and chicken, something like that. But I won't have, if I eat like nuts or cashews, it'll be unsalted raw cashews and nuts just to have some extra food, vegetables, but it won't be any carbs, it won't be any sodium. Drop pretty significant from that. Yeah, no problem, my friend. What is a really good resource is Renaissance Periodization there. I did try to use their app at one point in time. Did not last long because I was like 1 gram carb over what I was supposed to have for a meal, and it wouldn't even let me log it. Pissed me off, and I stopped that app. I do use MyFitnessPal occasionally to help track my stuff, but I really kind of lenient with the nutrition, to be honest with you. As long as I'm in that 235 to 240 range, like for myself right now, then I'm golden. That's a comfortable range for me to make a weight cut. I don't want to be any less. Probably affect my bench. I don't want to be any more. It's just adding more headache to my weight cut. So I just kind of watch what I can eat. And then like last night we had a 16-ounce ribeye steak at Texas Roadhouse, and I just made sure I ordered vegetables with it, and I didn't eat as much throughout the day. I'm Smitty T. When cutting carbs to cut weight for a meet, do you think that can lead to subpar performance on meet day? It definitely affects your performance. Um, doesn't necessarily have to, but especially for a raw lifter, you don't have those variables of strapping the suit a little bit differently, wrapping your knee wraps tighter, so it definitely can have a detriment if you're manipulating that throughout the week. Typically, if you have a 24-hour weigh-in, you have time to replenish pretty well. If you do it good, you can pretty much get back to that. So it might be a small detriment. You're trying to mitigate a huge detriment. If you have a 2-hour weigh-in, obviously I would not recommend. For this particular meet I'm talking about, probably have to do about 20-pound weight cut. And I will be manipulating, taking out the carbs and sodium week before. But I expect, I need to get to a point where I expect a drop in strength. Okay, so I'm not trying to come into this record like 810's a moonshot, because I know I'm going to be affected highly by a weight cut. So that's what makes it a little bit more interesting. Maybe you see my training videos, maybe I blow up 850, all right, in the shirt, and you're like, oh, that record's sealed. Well, I still have to do a 20-pound weight cut and put it together on that day with a shirt. I'm not sure after 20-pound weight cut how it's going to fit. So there's a lot of variables that go into play that, even if I'm even hitting 850 around that time with a single ply shirt, doesn't mean that record's a gimme. You know what I mean? So You have to go in expecting a detriment. I've always done that. I've always expected to do less. Even in training, like when I was cutting to 198 and going to the Arnold, I was hitting low 600s on the bench. And I knew on meet day, I was lucky to hit like 590 bench. Yeah, that would have been a great day because I knew I was expecting that 20 or 30 pound drop in what I could do. All right, so you just have to expect that. Um, and I was doing a full power meet too. If you're training individual lifts on a day, you got to expect you're going to be carrying fatigue into them as well. So it's a lot of just forecasting that. Right on. I load up after weigh-in, huge, usually 24-hour weigh-in. Yep, that's how you do it, my friend. And that day is just as tough as any because I'm stuffing my face and just trying to load up best I can. A lot of liquids. So that day is, you think that's the fun day, but I mean that's just as tough as the rest of it. Elbows tucked, good at bottom, but on the way up, how much elbow flare is too much? So if you're a raw lifter, I would not be thinking in that terms. If you are a shirted lifter, um, I wouldn't say you're flaring out. I would never purposely cue someone to flare out. I would tell them to spread the bar. You still need that tightness. Your elbows are just going to naturally come out as you're staying aligned under the bar. You're not going to shoot back like this. You're going to shoot back with keeping your elbow under position in your wrist. So I wouldn't really think about flaring out because what that's going to do is going to wing your scap up and then just kind of pitch you in this position where now you're just trying to grind through. You keep that scap locked down and just ride through with that tightness. Okay, so that's the difference there. So I really wouldn't think elbow flare for either raw or equip, but definitely not raw. Definitely not raw. And I wouldn't think tuck either for raw. What are your favorite chest accessory movements for building a big bench? I honestly don't do a ton, but I don't have much range of motion. Someone with more range of motion for chest, I like the incline dumbbell press. I do overhead press with our athletes. I love incline hammer strength machine. I love getting on that thing. Maybe it's just the old school bodybuilder type in me. Just love seeing that machine throwing some plates up. But I love the incline hammer strength machine for that. Been using that a lot lately in my accessory days. And yeah, I guess those are my big ones. I like cable flies, but I'd rather do a press than a fly. So usually incline dumbbell is going to be probably a staple for our athletes. We use a lot of that. And somebody says, yes, definitely understand the anticipation of the detriment. Yes, it's just part of the shindig. If you're gonna cut 20 something pounds, you can't expect to be hitting what you were hitting in training. So you have to factor that in, and I think that's where a lot of people end up getting tripped up a bit. Is they have these expectations based on what they're doing in training. But then there's so many variables and factors when you're at a meet that you can't possibly think you're going to be at those points. Like if you're just doing solely a deadlift session, you have great deadlift. Well, think about the variables throughout that day. Maybe you're training at night, you had all day to eat, you're rested up because I've probably rested the day before, you're resting that day going into it. You have that time to psych yourself up mentally and think about that lift. And then you go into a meet where you're doing all these lifts, fatigue is building up, you're getting some discomfort from squats. You did a huge weight cut. You're trying to eat throughout that day, which is hard to do. You're trying to stay hydrated throughout the day. You're thinking about stimulants, the pre-workout that you're taking during the day, trying not to overload too soon and burn your nervous system out. And then like something could happen in the warm-up room, or maybe you're not really focusing mentally on your lift well. I mean, there's so many variables that you just wouldn't even really think of that are going to affect you at that point. So you can't possibly think that you're going to achieve the same in that circumstance you would on training day, on meet day. It's just not going to happen. I think most people's expectations, are too high at points when we're talking that. All right, guys, so we're going to be rounding up. If anyone has any more questions, I'll take a few final questions. Make sure you guys check out the Benchcast on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, Benchcast. Take a few more questions. Hey, Coach Ben, what do you think of trying to bench in a shirt for my crappy shoulders once in a while? What's up, my friend? And for the bench shirt, just to stay out of shoulder discomfort, I wouldn't really mess with a bench shirt unless you're committed to making that change and trying to actually progress your lifts in a bench shirt, because it is such a different groove and different lift altogether. So I wouldn't use it solely right now for protective measures, because back in the day, the only thing out on the market was like bench shirts, and they were mostly, originally created for protection. All right. Nowadays, it's not. All right. Yeah, you get the added addition of the protection, but you are really creating a whole new lift in itself. So there's other things you could use if you're just trying to work around shoulder discomfort. You got all the lineups of the Titan Rams, slingshots. Obviously, all these things are going to help you mimic more of a raw group, but add that protective measure. So those are things I would look to use rather than a bench shirt. If you went the bench shirt route, nothing wrong with that. It's a whole different lift, and I would be committed to doing the bench shirt if you're going to play around with it. That would be my advice to you there, my friend. Sensor said Tenkaya. If I said that right. Deload and try one more week or build up again from scratch. Not sure what you're getting at there, my friend. But if you could expand on that, I'll answer for you. Vane, hey, okay, just trying to be creative. Thank you. The football bar works. Awesome, bud. Yeah, the Kabuki with the Cadillac bar. That's one that's really gonna probably be a huge shoulder saver for a lot of people. It seems like that bar is really designed to take a lot of the pressure off the shoulders if you're having issues. But that bar, the regular football bar is a little bit iffy, because then you have it's really tough getting down there, because you have to almost like angle it to feel right in terms of wrist position. So the Cadillac bar, I guess, is designed to, you can keep a good neutral wrist position, good alignment, and obviously takes you out of that external rotation in your shoulders there. So glad to hear that, my bud. And then yeah, in terms of just being creative, I mean, you can mess around. There's no rules to say you can't throw on a bench shirt every now and then, but see how you like it, see how it changes the groove a little bit, play around. But from a competitive standpoint, if you're gonna throw on a bench shirt, I would just try to commit to it, because it is just such a different lift. So it's kind of hard to say. Maybe if you had a hard time riding a bicycle, you throw on some training wheels for a while, right? That helps you do the movement. Versus now, this is throwing you on like some kind of crazy dirt bike motorcycle type deal. It's just a completely different thing. Zach Peterkowski. Hey man, I just want to say thank you for helping me realize that my elbows were tucked too much and how to fix it. Your explanation was more understandable than anyone else's. Really glad to hear that, my friend. Thanks for tuning in here. And yeah, that's a common issue, over tucking the elbows. And you really don't realize it, because you hear elbow tuck and all these different cues, flaring the elbows. When in reality, total opposite of the things you want to think about. I think those are more kind of old school based cues, a lot of shirted cues that get mixed over to raw lifters. Just because you hear them in the gym, they get thrown around and then they get continue to be said. So it ends up putting you in a poor alignment, and it really kind of hinders you, and sometimes can lead to discomfort. So I'm glad some of those videos got across to everyone out there, and you primarily there, Zach. I really appreciate you tuning in and sharing your thoughts on that. Glad it helped you out. Spencer, Sensor. I'll go back and check that out, my friend. I don't think I saw that. He said he has some questions back. Having a hard time finding him, friend. Maybe it didn't pop in. Yeah, I'm not seeing any in the chat. So I didn't get those comments. So I can answer that. I'll stay on for another minute here if you guys want to drop some questions. I didn't see that full question. So if you could just type that out again. Look back, I didn't see anything. Sip of coffee to the working man. But hey, guys, don't be strangers. If you have a question or I can help you out in any way, just shoot me an email. I check my inbox all the time. Coach Ben at bigbenches.com. Don't be a stranger. I'm here to help out. Care about you guys getting better. So, whatever the case may be, reach out. You don't have to wait till Tuesdays. You could shoot me an email. Stand for another minute here. Sip of coffee to the working man out there. A lot of shirted questions lately. I'm really excited about this single ply run to March. It's going to be a great meet in March. Just crazy good benchers all coming together at one place. It's going to be awesome. Back day workout or Reagan Grimes. Didn't know that too much elbow tuck could cause problems, man. I learn something new every day. Yeah, absolutely. It's the key, trying to learn something every day. But yeah, elbow tuck, I really wouldn't. Definitely, if you're a raw lifter, totally eliminate it from your vocabulary. If you're a shirted lifter, you got to know how to tuck properly, controlled, not just flaring your elbows around, but there's that art to touching in a bench shirt, and it does involve tucking your elbows. But I typically won't cue elbow tuck too much. I'll say tuck, but I like to try to explain how you're creating that by bending into the bar and controlling the elbows in. You have to use your back, keep your back tight when doing it. So there's definitely a key to doing that. But that's in a bench shirt. Raw lifting, very different. We actually have a bench course, online course on benching that's more directed to raw lifting too. So I talk a lot about our new online course, Mastering Shirted Benching. Everything jam-packed in there on how to break in and train in your bench shirt and all that. We have the other course, our bench press online course, and that's really directed towards raw lifting. It takes exactly what I just mentioned to guys earlier here, about how I break down the bench into 3 different phases: set up, take out, and the press. And it really dives into each of those things, and I give all my tips and tricks on what to do, how to set up, how to take the bar out, things to consider, how to put together a great press. Training programs involved in both of those online courses. You get that for essentially free with the cost of joining the course. So free previews available with both courses. I would recommend going to bigbenches.com, checking out those online courses. Costs nothing to check out the videos that are there, and you'll probably get some good knowledge out of them. So definitely go check out those online courses. Instagram, ABM Bull. What's up, buddy? Thanks for being there last weekend, helping out. It's always good to give back. Great seeing you. Hope to see you come by here and get some benching with us. We'd love that. Always looking for people to come down and bench with us. Just get together, shoot the shit, have a good time benching. We get pretty crazy in our bench shirts. So open to anyone. Long Island, New York. You know where to find me on the bench. So shoot me a message. Add eel. Sip of coffee for all the bananas in the world. Well, we haven't had that one in a while. Sip of coffee to the bananas. You know what? No, it was interesting. When we were out in the Caribbean, I think it was St. Martin's or something, and they growing bananas there. That's where they grow bananas, and just to see all the bunches of bananas upon all the trees, and they're all shrouded in this like netting and stuff, so that the birds can't get in. Crazy to see. Never seen so many bananas. Sip of coffee. Absolutely can't wait to get that shirt in. Gonna be crazy. I'm excited. It's exciting. It's an exciting thing getting that shirt in for the first time too, and messing around with it. Frustrating as well, give you a heads up there. It gets pretty frustrating, especially right off the bat. I remember so excited to got my first shirt in. Can't wait to use it. I throw it on. I don't know what to expect. I don't know what a tight shirt is. I'm like, shit, this thing's way too tight. But I mean, it was a perfect fit. Um, wasn't too tight. I just didn't know at the time. My first shirt, and yeah, go to start training in it, and I'm like, screw this thing. You know, it's fun because you get so much weight in your hands. It definitely was pretty fun at first to just be able to lift so much more weight and open up this whole new world of competing. But I tell you what, it gets very frustrating. You have a few dumps towards your face. You're trying to figure it out. You're like, why doesn't it feel good? Why I'm not getting these good smooth throwbacks? And um, definitely very frustrating. But it's just you gotta take your lumps and bruises, move on, and learn from it. And it's such a harder skill to learn, in my opinion. That's why I love equip lifting so much. It's just so much more goes into it, I think, in my opinion, than raw lifting. Raw lifting, you can get away with just kind of sinking and heaving. We were talking about Julius Maddox a little bit and how his bench is kind of just get down and toss that thing up. You know, if you did that in a shirt, that's not going to end well. So that's why I like the beauty of equip lifting. It's just so much more technique to it. Add eel. How much do shirts typically add first time round? Well, so talking specifically first time round, you can't expect yourself to get a huge boost out of a shirt because you're probably learning so much stuff. And it really does depend on like your range of motion's obviously a huge thing. If you have to travel less, it's a lot easier. What shirt you have on, if it's a looser shirt or not. Usually you're better off not trying to learn and break in a tight shirt right off the bat. Getting a used shirt's a good option, or something that's going to be manageable at first. You can get that groove down because you do want to be able to practice full range. So if you're spending that time just breaking in a new shirt your first go round, it's going to add to the frustration. But um, how much can you add? Well, really depends. A multiply shirt, I'd say 100's a good bet off the bat. You know, even first session, getting 100 over your current max should be doable. But from there on, there's so many factors. Like I'm getting over 400 pounds out of a bench shirt, which you would think is pretty nuts. Um, but you know, it works out. My range of motion being so short, I can handle a really tight shirt, and then just to have the strength and the groove to really lock out that weight. If you ride it perfect, it's nice and smooth like butter. So yeah, that's why I get so much out of my bench shirt relative. Maybe someone else might not get that much. Last question here, guys. Behind the neck presses for benching, I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, there's so many other things I'd rather do than put yourself in that vulnerable position. I like behind the neck pull downs. But as for presses, not that you can't do it, I wouldn't go so far down because you're such a vulnerable position. That weight's just forcing you into range of motion that you don't really have. So, not something I would personally do heavy, and not something I would do in a full range. So, that's my recommendation on that. All right, guys, I appreciate everyone tuning in. Really awesome to see you guys continue to show up every Tuesday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Bench Talk Live on YouTube. Subscribe if you haven't. Check out Instagram at Big Benches, and make sure you go to our website. Pick yourself up some new apparel items we got going on out there. The equipment we sold out of our Big Bench and wrist wraps. We got multi-purpose wraps still. Still got sleeves in stock too before we restock, but now's the time to grab those up before those are gone too. Best elbow sleeves in the game. Also, make sure you check out our online courses like I've mentioned before. Guys, these courses are designed on your own pace. Bunch of videos. We got 40 plus videos of both those courses. All right, one's for raw lifting, mastering shirted benching, obviously for shirted benching. Okay, if you're someone that is interested in learning a bench shirt, wants to get better and more advanced in a bench shirt, that course, again, for the price it is, jam packed. All right, and you can make small payments as 33 a month. Okay, and everything, access everything you need, and then I'm there in your corner helping support you too. So I want to see you get better. I want to see someone learn the shirt because I'd like to see more shirted benches out there. I think it's a fantastic thing. A lot of fun, and I'd love to see more people do it. So anything I can do to help you guys along, feel free to reach out to me anytime. Coach Ben at bigbenches.com. Don't be shy. Email me. All right. If you have any questions, shoot me a video, anything like that. All right, guys. Thank you for tuning in to Bench Talk Live. I will see you next time.